You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Okay, welcome to the Village of Wappingers Falls meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees for today, May 27th, 2020. Please say the Pledge of Allegiance along with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
all.
So hold on one second. So tonight's meeting, I have confirmed with the village attorney that tonight's meeting has been convened in accordance with the governor's March 13th, 2020 executive order 202.1 and all superseding orders, which suspends certain provisions of the open meetings law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view tonight's work session meeting, and a transcript will be provided at a later date. We will do a roll call of the board members, and there will be a quorum present for this meeting. I've also confirmed with the village clerk that this meeting has been duly noticed. We have fulfilled our legal notice requirements by posting notice on the village's bulletin boards, faxing to the library and news organizations, posting notice on the village's homepage of its website, and listing on the village Facebook page. Oh, and I'm just going to share the agenda. Okay, John, would you please do the roll call?
Okay. Mayor Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Markajohn.
Here.
Trustee Davis.
Here.
Trustee Komornick.
Here.
Trustee Huber.
Here.
Trustee Witten. Absent. Trustee Panessa.
Here.
Village Attorney Wallace.
Here.
Okay, we're going to get started. I'm sorry, I have to get the Can everybody see the projects for discussion? Or no?
No.
You see the agenda?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So John Zarowski, we're going to start with you, and we're going to talk about the projects for discussion.
Good evening, everybody. It's John Zarowski, KC Engineering. Just go through the project list. I sent it out to you. Here we go. So Franny Reese Park is obviously construction stopped on the 27th due to the COVID orders from the governor. Saccone has moved on to an essential construction project and probably won't be back till August, which the completion date right now is September 11th. That'll probably need to be adjusted. Moving on, the pedestrian safety improvements, TAP 8716.74. The DOT did approve the project. The contract has been signed. Contact is working through the highway work permit and submittals. The pre-bid meeting will be scheduled once that's done. Construction probably will begin around late June, and the completion date on that is October 17th, 2020. Utility improvement contract 5.
You gotta scroll up, Mayor.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. We are working with the town just to coordinate some of the utilities, working back and forth with CPL. We're moving ahead on that. Once we get things worked out with them, we'll be going to the Department of Health and the DPW for approvals. The USDA funding application, that is pretty much ready to go. We just need a few bits of information from the village. mostly financial stuff. That is a rolling deadline, so we can submit that whenever we get it done. We did do an EFC listing for the projects. The water main projects, we can do them all as 12-inch if that's what the village wants to do. One of the listings was for the water supply facility, the new building, and then also we put in for replacing and upgrading both the Delaverne and Windlass tank. The grease trap project's moving forward. The EPA brownfield grants is on hold, although there's some murmuring about moving forward on the bleachery. You got to roll up again. The sewer and water infrastructure study is essentially, it's been submitted, it's been circulated. We're waiting for comments. Nothing further is being doing on that. That's on hold. And the Podgy Terrace main and water main extension, we're just waiting for additional action if requested by the village. That's everything. Any questions?
Yeah, John, I got something. The Franny Reese Park.
Yes.
Ben Saccone will not be back until August sometime. I'm not happy with that. I mean, he started off at the beginning of the year with us, and now he's leaving us to go someplace else, only to come back later on in the season.
Well, I mean, if the order gets lifted and essential projects can move forward, then we can push a little bit. But right now, he's trying to keep his workforce, employed.
It's under the thing where the construction can go back. I mean, they can go back to work.
Well, that's the governor's order. Until that's lifted, he really can't work at the park. It only can be essential.
I guess I just don't understand it because I drive past the Stackenkill High School every day, and the football field's almost completed, and they've been working on that since, beginning of March, and they went through the whole thing. I guess I just don't understand the order. I mean, that's not an essential thing, but these guys can work.
Well, the contractor is at risk at some, I think it's $10,000 a day fine if he gets reported.
That's
So-
a school project.
What's his risk to us?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a school project anyway. It's exempt and they were allowed to continue with the construction.
There you go. Okay.
Not an essential thing.
So, but isn't today the first day that construction, or yesterday the first day that construction projects could restart?
Yeah, it was
That's what I thought.
phase one.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we can reach out to Saccone and see if we can get him back, but again, he moved on to another project just because,
Well,
and I'm not happy with it either, honestly. But again,
Oh,
we
no,
can
well,
push.
What we could do is we could charge him so much day for his equipment being there, and we could backdate it.
There you go.
Yesterday.
I wish they would put that in a contract, but they don't. I brought that up a few years back.
Well, I mean, there is a completion date. Is there if it's one of our contractors, there's probably liquidated damages. And once the order is lifted, he's at risk of completion for an adjusted date, but we'll have to work that out with him.
Yeah, I'd just like to see this thing complete, and
Well, as would I. I mean, I don't like that
If
it's
he-
laying there.
going to be 4 feet tall down there, and
If he had other jobs on his plate, then our job should be just as important as the other ones, unless it's something that was kicked up by emergency need or whatever. So if he's obligated to us for a job and he's doing other jobs, he needs to fulfill his responsibilities, his contract with us.
All right. Well,
early.
we'll have that conversation with him, make sure he understands where we're coming from.
At least give us an explanation as to why the other jobs are more important. If the band's lifted, he can go back to work, and he's got other jobs bid out. Is that what were the plans all along? So something doesn't make sense.
All
I'm
right.
sure there's a lot. I'm sure there's
We'll
a lot
have
of
this
construction
conversation with him. We'll have a
Yeah.
conversation with him.
And I'm sure there's a lot of construction workers that want to go back to work. If he needs to hire some folks, they probably.
I'm
need
sure
to
there
hire.
is. I'm sure there is. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
any other questions for John?
No, thanks, John.
Okay. I'm going to take off then. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Okay, so the village has been working on a draft of the Wappingers Falls Reopening Safely 2020 document. And we have so I just wanted to introduce that document, and it is something that is changing day by day, like our attorney said, but it's also something that we haven't received all the information on. So there's 4 phases, everybody knows that. There's also essential services that have been allowed to operate before then. The village has been working on its own essential service portion, but it also has laid out phase 1 guidance and some suggestions. And it's also already been working on phases 2, 3, and 4 if and when they get set up and allowed for groups of people that fall into those phases to reopen. So I'm just going to share that document with you, and that will be on the, that will be able to be, that will be sent out to all of you tomorrow. And then I would like to get that, see if I could get comments back from you, and then we could get this passed at the next meeting. Hold on. Sorry about that. I have about 8 different documents and okay. So the document starts off with a preamble and some general information about the virus itself, and lets you know that that this is being developed in a changing atmosphere, and that we are working towards reopening. However, does point out that all levels of government are under no illusion that there will be 100% compliance with personal protection and assembly requirements. We acknowledge by reopening that there is a risk of resurgence in the virus that could initiate a second wave, as particularly in New York, as some states are not yet seeing a decrease. And with people traveling through New York, that's definitely a potential danger. But while getting village businesses back to work, safety will be our main focus. We also let you know that there are no dates in here going into the future that we're certain about. So we started off looking at essential services, and in order to look at those, we reached out to our provider of workers' comp, and they had some guidance that they were able to share with us. And so this guidance is here, and it starts off talking about cleaning policies, Zoom meetings, and virtual meetings. There will be a training and information given to workers, telling them not to use each other's work phones, desks, offices, or other work tools and equipment at each personal station. I'd suggest that we look at air filtration, and we have already worked with our village clerk on putting together a plan to ensure that we have the proper type and number of PPE in inventory, which includes hand sanitizer, masks, and gloves. Acknowledge that we have different departments that will have different needs. We talk about glove use and the right training to go with glove use. and how there can be cross-contamination of PPE and how they need to be properly disposed. Hand washing, non-essential travel should stop and has stopped up, and we would update our emergency operations plan with the help of our local health department. We'll identify space that can be used to accommodate people if needed, and we'll develop an emergency communication plan for distributing timely and accurate information to workers and those you serve. So we have already been postponing and canceling events. Preventative actions will be outlined. Prevention supplies at our organization: soap, hand sanitizer, tissues, trash baskets. We even have information posted by the sinks. We have been working on changing the way the staff comes in and flexible attendance. And we have made sure that we've been able to offer accommodations should they be needed. So we broke these out and we put together our own guidelines. And we did this with John as our safety coordinator, John Karge, that is. So we have a setup for the Village Hall. And since we've been looking at that, we've gotten hand sanitizer dispensers out. We've talked to the employees about PPE. We've been working in shifts, and we're putting dividers between different areas, which are outlined in this numbered section. We talk about the way we will separate visitors from people who work in the Village Hall. Water department and a 3-day rotation. Masks and Lysol wipes have been provided for a clean working environment. Then we talk about the highway, sewer, and garbage group and how we know that we need to maintain the continuity of service. Face masks and where we got the PPE through the good help of our Garner Fire Chief, the Fire Chief, Adam Van Tassel, Jason Ensign, and Dutchess County Emergency Manager Bill Beal. We've talked to the Highway Superintendent about them equipping the trucks for the Highway and the Water Department, that the personnel are to ride alone in separate trucks whenever possible. The workers are supposed to wipe down their work area, especially in the vehicles, with a bleach solution. And they need to take special care working with garbage and sanitary sewer. The zoning office has put together a plan as well, which is similar to the Village Hall. The court has been working on a special plan throughout New York State, and our appointed judge has been working with the entire state on planning for smaller courts. So that's outlined here. It talks about the unified court systems restrictions. We interviewed our police commissioner, and we've put in a section about that. And the firehouse has also developed its own set of procedures. So after those are essential services that the Village of Wappingers Falls provides, but then the governor has set up a phased reopening of businesses, and it involves phase 1, which was yesterday, which is construction, manufacturing, and wholesale supply chain. And select retail is able to do curbside pickup. Phase 2 would be professional services, finance and insurance, retail, administrative support, real estate, rental, leasing. There are dates set up for these, but those change every day. So we have not put any specific dates in. There is an algorithm that they look at when they judge the results of the 7 ways of measuring the virus's effect on the different regions. Phase 3 would be restaurants and food services, hotels and accommodations, and phase 4 would be large assembly areas, which includes arts, entertainment and recreation, and education. So for the village, we've identified our private construction projects and our public construction projects, and we have provided guidance from New York State's executive guidelines from the for phase 1 businesses. And the governor's website has a whole section on what is mandatory and what are recommended best practices. And so we as enforcement will need to be aware of these. So we will get these to our police and zoning, protective equipment, physical distancing, cleaning and hygiene, and communication, screening, so then it gets into more specific guidelines, gets even to greater detail. And there is a section which might not apply to us, probably does not apply to us, the non-food related agriculture guidelines. And there's a specific section for curbside and in-store pickup for retail for both employers and employees, as far as physical distancing, protective equipment, hygiene and cleaning, communication, screening. So, manufacturing has the same set of areas of concern. And wholesale trade does too. And so that is everything in that section. So while the governor's office has come up with guidance on that particular group, they have not yet come up for guidance on phase 2. So we provided, and we will update with the governor's guidance, but first of all, right now we just have guidance from the Center for Disease Control. And we are identifying the village construction projects, which I guess has not yet started. So those are Franny Reese Park, Bain Park, and the Route 9D pedestrian maintenance project. 9 restaurant and eatery businesses. And so we've been working with the Wappingers Falls Business and Professional Association to help with the organization and process of opening the village safely. We've got these guidelines, but these expect to be updated with more New York State mandatory and New York State suggested practices for these specific phase 2 operations. Phase 3 for the village, we have an appendix attached to this of the eateries in the village. We have been working with individual eateries and we've worked with plazas. We've divided the groups into plazas that have multiple restaurants in them. We've talked to their landlords about whether or not, that is, landlords would be open to non-site plan approval processes that the businesses might be allowed to do. If they're okay with that, we would go further with the businesses and talk about whether or not they might take up a part of a parking lot or something else. And we've been talking to the some other piece of real estate that they own. We've been talking to our attorneys about how that's been working in other communities. And we've also identified, and we'll talk about later, whether or not the board would allow for there to be picnic tables set up in our public parks that could be used by anyone who visits our parks from any eating establishment. They could enjoy eating in our parks at one of our picnic tables. So there are all kinds of safeguards that have to do with the that the CDC lists here for how to work inside the restaurants, and those are listed here. And then phase 4 would be cinemas and theaters. So we have already been talking to the County Players Theater. They're interested in doing a July performance in the Mizzier Park. We have expressed interest in hearing more about what they might be able to put together. If they were going to do something like that, we would need to also have our police force there just to make sure that people are gently reminded that there might be some members of the vulnerable populations that have come to enjoy the performance, and that people should maintain distance between anybody that's not within their household. This also is something that needs to be looked at for the places of worship. The Village of Wappingers Falls hosts, we're only 5,500 people, but our places of worship have more than 6,000 worshipers come into the Village of Wappingers Falls to use our different places of worship. And so they have a set of guidelines that are for them. The summer camp would have its own set of guidelines. The village board has already met with the Recreation Committee and decided that that we do not have the right infrastructure in place to meet the guidelines set up as we understand them. We would continue to look at that, but that's where we are right now. We put links in this document so that people can get to other locations where the governor has his own guidance, and where there might be guidance from other areas. So that's basically the plan, and I just wanted to introduce it tonight and see if I could get it out to everybody tomorrow and ask you guys to comment on it, and then I would like to have a meeting about this at our next meeting.
Good
Any-
job.
Okay, so are there any questions on this? If you have any questions while you're looking at it, just give me a shout. So that's a good lead into some other the next items on the agenda. So I think we have quite a few restaurants who are interested in us using portions of our Mizzier Park, maybe Mary Ross Park. When Franny Reese Park is done, that might be something that we could consider. We would be able to use these picnic tables down at the Darrigan Park down on the creek. We've got some funding to be able to purchase them through that program. But until that park is opened, we could keep the picnic tables at another location. So I'd like to ask the board if we could have 2 or 3 board members work on setting the sections up in the park and helping us to develop the right procedures for that. And I'd like to ask Kevin if he might be somebody who could take that up as the leader of that group.
Yes, can I add a couple people to it though?
Sure, absolutely.
Help me out?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I've been talking to some.
Okay, good.
Well, the only thing we might have a problem with is, and I brought this up at a rec meeting, was just who would police the area to make sure everything was cleaned up. That's the problem we might come across. You know what I'm saying? Where
Yep.
a restaurant came in and the person that ordered it could just leave their stuff behind it.
Well, yeah, so right now, the guidance doesn't allow for a restaurant to have table service in the park.
Yeah.
Now, what is allowed is people to pick up their items in the restaurant and take themselves up. So it would be no different than littering that already exists from people who use our public picnic areas. But we would still definitely need a procedure in place.
Okay, great.
Care of that. And the tables could not be reserved for any one restaurant or person. This would just be park equipment that would be there for anyone who visits our park.
Okay.
So, okay. So if the board's okay with that, could we, I'd like to ask if we could take a vote to allow for picnic areas to be developed in Mizzier Park and Mary Ross Park. And we would come back if there were going to be any others, and that would be contingent upon review by the Parks Committee, which is Kevin Huber and two other members of the board, up to two other members of the board, and a group that Kevin puts together. And Kevin, you should also check in with our attorney just to make sure if there's some special request. If it should be just as I described it, but if there's some special request, you should check in with our attorney. So,
We'll do.
could we get a motion
I'll make it.
in a second?
Second.
Okay.
Was that seconded by Billy?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So I have no one as opposed. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is I'm in receipt of a request to look at the parking spaces that are lined out on Moran Avenue at the northernmost end of Moran Avenue where it dead ends. There's a request to make those a 20-minute parking area. Right now, there's no time limit on them. So I think before we go any further, I'd talk to our attorney about it, and I'd like to ask if we could push this over to our attorney to find out who has jurisdiction over that real estate and to see if this is something that we possibly can legislate before we start talking about legislating it.
This is the property that's like contiguous to the Dairy Queen.
Yes.
So there's a question, just so you know, the board is aware, there's a question as to whether or not it is in the state right away, or whether the village owns the property. So you're gonna have to explore that a little bit. And I asked the mayor to reach out to our village engineer, to just see if they could also get us a quick answer as to whether or not the state, has jurisdiction over that area.
Okay, are there any questions?
Should show on parcel access, shouldn't it?
No, it like it often does for roadways, it doesn't give us more, it does not give any DOT right-of-way information, and it doesn't show any ownership, which is not likely the case.
Yeah, I'd rather not recommend this spending any money on an abstract either. I think this is something that is readily, we could find that out without having to expend money on an abstract.
Okay, so there's no action to be taken on this, but this is just to let you know what's coming up, and if we get closer on this, we'll talk to you more. These parking spots actually serve not just Dairy Queen, but there's two businesses to the north of the dead end, and then there are at least 2 or 3 businesses on the west side of Moran Avenue. So all of them would have access to those spots. Okay, I was also contacted by Orchard View School's principal, Laura DiStefano, and she asked me if on June 26, 2020, that the graduates of Orchard View could line up at Mizzier Park in cars separated from each other and drive through the park and then drive south down South Mizzier after they cross East Main Street, make a left onto Maple Avenue and then a right onto Major McDonald Way. It would start at 9:45 in the morning. They're asking if they can use Mizzier Park. They can proceed down South Mizzier Avenue, and they're also asking, they asked me if they can close Major McDonald Way from 9:45 to 11:30. The village doesn't actually have any part of that, but we could close our entrance into it if that's something that we're interested in. We'd put up signs to let people know that that was happening, but I think they actually have jurisdiction over that road themselves because it's part of the school. I know that they have to maintain it. So are there any comments about that or?
No, great idea.
Okay, there's only about 30 graduates and they would have the graduation outside. So it would, and I'm also happy that it would be so close for village residents if they wanted to attend it, if they had kids going there. So if there's no comments that we need to talk about it, is there anybody that wants to make a motion?
I'll make it.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee Davis. A motion made by Trustee Panessa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think that's all I had for the published part of the agenda. Does the board have anything that it wants to bring up at this time?
I have something for executive personnel. All right, wait, before we go there, I'd like to thank the highway department. I stopped and talked with Pete last week, and they redid the pathways over at Mizzier Park to save us a little money because Jim Baisley used to do it.
Okay, good.
Pete did all the trails. Usually does half, and Jimmy does the other half. So he did the whole park for us. So I'd like to thank the highway guys.
Okay, good.
List road signs are marked out.
Are they? So you got
Highway's
two
Highway-
locations?
2 locations.
Oh, excellent. Oh, good.
So they should be,
Curious to see how that works. So that
we'll see.
could be used on other streets.
Yeah.
If the people on the streets want them.
It took some finagling for locations to be found, but it's all good. We're ready to go.
Good. Good job. Anything else?
No,
No,
Things-
so I believe somebody wants to go into executive, so I would like to talk about Kevin personnel.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't think it's a vote.
so there would not be a vote after this?
No.
Or is this for discussion only? Okay, so okay, so could we get a motion to go into executive?
I'll make it.
Second,
Seconded by who?
trustee Mark John.
Matt, can you send me a copy of the agenda tonight?
Yes, you should have it, I think.
Oh,
I'll send you a copy of it. I have it.
thank you.
Okay, so thank you for, thank you, and we will see you next time. So.
thanks, Mayor. Bye, everybody.